Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the City Council meeting on June 24th, 2024. Those interested in participating in today's meeting were eligible to register online using the delegation registration form at www.kitchener.ca/delegation or via email at delegation@kitchener.ca. Any written comments received prior to the commencement of today's meeting have been circulated to members of council and will form part of the public record of the meeting. The meeting live stream and archive videos are available at www.kitchener.ca/watchnow. Before we begin today's meeting, I want to acknowledge again, as we did earlier this month, that June is National Indigenous History Month. A month where throughout Canada we honour the histories, achievements and resilience of First Nations, Inuit and Métis peoples who have cared for this land since time immemorial. As we gather this afternoon, we are gathering on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. We recognize our responsibility to serve as stewards for the land and honour the original caretakers who came before us. Our community is enriched by the enduring knowledge and deep-rooted traditions of the diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit in Kitchener today. Before we begin this afternoon's meeting, I'd like to acknowledge that earlier this month, the Council and staff of the City of Kitchener joined our entire community and those in Toronto and beyond in extending our sincere sympathies to the family and friends of former Mayor Morley Rosenberg. Serving as Kitchener's 53rd mayor from 1977 to 1982, Mayor Rosenberg first served as a City of Kitchener alderman, as they were called back in the day, from 1968 to 1976, and also served on the council of the regional municipality of Waterloo. At 87 years of age at the time of his passing, Morley Rosenberg, a lawyer by training, lived a life committed to public service. During his tenure at the City of Kitchener, he fought to preserve Kitchener's historic City Hall, was a strong proponent for engagement with community groups, and pushed for the creation of the ward system that still serves Kitchener residents to this very day. The preservation of the clock tower from that historic City Hall saw it permanently eventually placed in Victoria Park in 1995 and being included on the city logo used today. Mayor Rosenberg was also mayor when the Centre in the Square opened in 1980, and to this day, that facility remains one of the best performing arts centres of its size in the country from an acoustic perspective. Mayor Rosenberg was also a strong advocate for recycling, serving as mayor in the years when the city worked with community members and the private sector to introduce the Blue Box program to Canada and the world. Subsequent to his time at the city, former Mayor Rosenberg served Ontario residents on the Ontario Municipal Board for 20 years. Moving to Toronto many years back, Morley's commitment to public service continued even after his time with the OMB, including serving on the City of Toronto's Committee of Adjustment, working with community groups on planning matters, and even seeking a seat on Toronto Council in 2018 at the age of 81. On behalf of the citizens of Kitchener and City of Kitchener Council, today we once again offer our heartfelt condolences on the passing of former Mayor Morley Rosenberg to his many family and friends in Kitchener, Toronto, and beyond. May Morley's memory be a blessing to each of them, and know that the hearts of our community continue to be with you in the days and months ahead during this difficult time. In memory of Mayor Rosenberg, the City of Kitchener did lower all flags at city facilities during the mourning period. Both Deputy CAO Michael May and myself were honoured to attend Mayor Rosenberg's memorial service in Toronto earlier this month, and I was privileged to spend time with his family at the home of his daughter for the Shiva that took place in the days following the service. And today, being the first regularly scheduled council meeting since Mayor Rosenberg's passing, I now invite everyone to stand as they're able to observe a moment of silence in memory of Mayor Rosenberg. Thank you. And now if I can ask people to stay standing for the singing of our national anthem. Thank you very much, everyone. As you can tell, we have some sound system issues, and actually after this meeting, they're going to tear out this old sound system and put a new one in over the course of the summer, so we can all hardly wait. Okay, moving on then. On motion by Councillor Johnson, the minutes of the regular meeting held May 27th, 2024, and special meetings held May 13th, May 27th, June 3rd, June 13th, and June 17th, as mailed to the Mayor and Councillors, be accepted. All those in favour? Opposed? That's carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On item 7.2.d in the Finance Committee for Brom Yard, as my family owns property close to or almost adjacent to Brom Yards. And then I am going to declare a conflict or recuse myself from the discussion for the rental replacement bylaw, as although myself and my family don't own property that would be immediately affected, but in the future those lands are developable, and I think it'd be prudent for me to recuse myself in the direction of that discussion. And related to the rental replacement bylaw, there was an item in caucus which I thought there may have been some relatable discussion with the rental replacement bylaw, but because that did not take place, I did not have the conflict in the caucus item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Singh. Okay, with those noted conflicts, we'll move on to communications referred to file, and you'll see the 2 flag requests for later in the year that have been processed. And now we'll move on to presentation, and I'd like to invite Jana Miller, Director of Corporate Customer Service, to come forward. Welcome, Jana.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Council. I'm pleased to share with you that the City of Kitchener was recently awarded the Municipal Service Delivery Officials inaugural Excellence in Service Delivery Award for the City Hall Service Centre project. The award was presented May 16th at the gala for the annual MSDO conference in Kelowna, BC. The MSDO is a national organization that brings together senior municipal service delivery professionals from across Canada for networking, educational, and professional development opportunities, and also for the sharing of best practices. And the National Excellence in Service Delivery Award recognizes a Canadian municipal service team that has made a difference in the lives of citizens and showcased excellence in service delivery. So while the development and launch of the City Hall Service Centre involved nearly 200 staff from across many service teams, as you know, there was a small core project team that guided the centre from vision to reality. And they are here with me today. And I'd just like to recognize and thank Christine Baker, Trevor Lennox, Jennifer McLean, and Lisa McCaughey for all of their work in bringing the vision to life and for the attention they now give to the day-to-day operations of the centre. In the 5 months since it opened, more than 10,000 customer interactions have taken place at the City Hall Service Center. And not a day has gone by that we haven't heard from our residents about how much they appreciate the ease, convenience, and friendliness of that experience. And not too many days have gone by that we don't have another Canadian city touring the center, looking to experience it for themselves and to understand more about how in-person service delivery might be improved for their own residents. And they come here because there is nowhere else to go in the country to see a comprehensive municipal service center in action. Kitchener is the first. So often when we come to council with the vision for a project, staff can share with you the experiences of municipalities who've done it before us. That was not the case this time. This time, we moved forward and developed a solution based almost entirely on what residents have been telling us for 30 years is the experience in finding and receiving service at Kitchener City Hall. And in that sense, Council made a very visionary decision in June of 2021, almost 3 years ago this week, I think, actually, to unanimously support the vision for a new high bar for in-person service delivery, not only for Kitchener City Hall, but for city halls across Canada. And your ongoing support in ensuring the necessary staff and financial resources were put behind it allowed us to go from that vision to the very successful reality that the centre is today. So as I officially present the National Award to Council today, I do so with gratitude on behalf of the project team and also on behalf of the residents that we serve every day in the Kitchener City Hall Service Centre. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jana.
I do have the award here today, so I know there may be comments, but I just wanted to ask if before we go, we could have a photo with you, Mayor,
Okay,
and we'll invite the project team. We'll do that now? Okay.
And there are some comments, and Jen, I'll just begin by congratulating you and the team for the great work that you did in bringing this to fruition. You know, as you mentioned, people have been talking about this for almost 30 years since this building actually opened, and it never got beyond the ideation stage, quite frankly, and the idea, even in the early days, was very different than the idea that actually came forward today, which brings people from all departments down, taking shifts and taking turns down at the center and really providing a one-stop shop where people can get the services they need and be supported cross-departmentally, and it really has become a model. I know you've had numerous delegations, as you pointed out, that have come and looked at it, others that have talked to our staff, some who've talked to me, you know, wondering how we've done it and why we did it and how it all came together. And I think how it all came together was in true Team Kitchener spirit, where you know, some great minds in our organization, represented by the 5 of you here and many others who've been involved, brought the idea together, and it really has done, when you look at some of the stats, a wonderful job of serving our community since then. And I know several members of council would like to also share some accolades with you, and so Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Jana and team. Like, it's so exciting to hear from residents about what you've been able to do here. And I know just the welcoming atmosphere that we have as people enter the front doors of City Hall, that there's someone waiting there to show them where next they're going to go to, and then they go into the new center. And as the mayor was saying, they can meet with people from all different areas of our staffing areas and meet with them right there. The whole concept is simple. People have talked about it for years. One-stop shopping, meet people where they're at. but you never seem to get there. And you have done this. It's pretty remarkable. And I know when I hear from residents who say, your staff is so friendly, I met with someone from planning right away, they were able to help me with something that I thought was complex and was going to take a very long time to deal with, and there was someone there right away to help them. People are just thrilled. We're thrilled. Thank you so much. It's so smart. It seems so simple, yet it really was a big task to get here, and you're absolutely incredible, and thank you for shining the way that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you all. I can reiterate everything Councillor Johnson said, so I'll just make mine a little shorter. Remarkable work that you've done and your team. I can tell you testimonies from residents that I've talked to that have visited City Hall since this has opened, and just said to be able to come into City Hall and get taken care of on one level, how confusing it used to be to go to this floor, that floor, and it was like a maze for some people, for myself even years ago. So I think it's just remarkable that you've done such great, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Mayor Urbanovic, and thank you to the team and everything else that you've done to set this up and to make sure that the execution has been flawless. I know with my time here and a few of us here, one of the things that we've really instilled along with staff was that our residents are just not residents. We treat them as customers. And that's the culture that we've wanted to instill in this organization for many, many years. And it's no surprise to me that we're the first to do this. Everywhere I've been, like whenever people come up to me and say, why are you guys are always so, organized and know what you're doing and everything else? And it's like, I always say, we've instilled customer service as our #1 focus. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ioannidis. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Ioannidis has put it really excellently. It's the approach of customer service. I think when it comes to government, sometimes the service delivery is always looked at, hey, we got to provide the basics of the core services that whatever the order of government may be. But the approach that the staff had, the idea for the service center, and then I think the vision that this council had to accept it. I'll quickly share my reflection on this one, or perspective. When we looked at the price tag, it seemed high. It's like, you know what? People can go about the City Hall, they can go to the different departments, but we're spending that much to be here. But seeing for what it's become and how easy it is, and the fact that the entire City Hall as a function is all in one place, as opposed to, again, residents or customers having to go from different floors up and down depending on their need, and then further clarification going back to the different floors once more. That doesn't have to happen anymore. So I think we are reducing our staff time, we're becoming more efficient, and as Councillor Ioannidis has said, we're providing the customer service that our residents deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to echo everything my fellow councillors have said. The one thing I want to add is thanking all our staff, because this new service delivery method required buy-in and enthusiasm from all members of staff. So whatever departments have to work together to get a permit or get something done, everyone's done it with a big smile, and it's a great customer experience. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schneider. Councillor Stretch.
Thank you. I think my first day, or close to one of my first days, was the grand opening of the service center, and I just wanted to say thank you for making me look so good. I don't know a different way of serving my constituents without the service center, so yeah, it makes a big difference, definitely. Even emailing constituents to say, have you tried this number first? And that being a really, sometimes the quickest way to get the help that people need. And I just wanted to say, it really enables us to focus on the service and the work for the community instead of system navigating. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Stretch. And Jen, again, thank you to you and the team for a job well done.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move on to, actually, before we do that. We'll now move on to delegations, and to all the delegations, I'd like to remind everyone, while public participation is welcomed at meetings, Council is committed to engaging in respectful and constructive dialogue with members of our community, and conducting yourself in any of the following manners may result in an immediate removal from the meeting: interrupting the mayor, councillors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about the mayor, councillors, staff, or others, and hate speech or defamatory comments. One last reminder for delegations: please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from Council. This is Council's time to really listen and reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from our community members. And with that, and it being the end of June, which is report card time in our school system, it's also report card time at City Hall. And so I'd like to invite Judy Stephen-Wells and Troy Glover from our Compass Kitchener Advisory Committee to present the 2023 Compass Kitchener report card to the City of Kitchener. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. This is Compass Kitchener's third report card with respect to the 2019 to 2022 strategic plan. You can see on the next slide the 9 members of Compass Kitchener that were involved in the evaluations.
Can you maybe just put up, if staff can put up the sound, because folks are having a hard time hearing you. Yeah, maybe you can just move the microphone. Yeah,
there we go. Is that better?
That helps a little bit. Yep. Thank you so much.
Okay, super. Here you can see the 9 members of Compass Kitchener that were involved in the evaluations and the preparation of today's report. In the next slide, you'll see the key elements that constituted our evaluation approach, the same approach we've used in all 3 report cards. For this particular strategic plan, our focus was to look at timing, impact, accountability, including public engagement, and the budget, whether things came in on budget. We also developed a number of criteria that we would use for overall rating of projects to determine whether they exceeded, met, or did not meet Compass Kitchener's expectations. These are outlined in detail in your report. Looking at the 17 projects we've already reported on, you can see the 8 that were listed which exceeded our expectations, the 7 which met our expectations, and 2 which did not meet our expectations. So very high achievement in projects overall.
For the 2024 report, we reviewed 6 projects: the Bike Share Program, Pedestrian First Streets, Civic District Master Plan, Downtown Vision, Mill Cortland Community Center Expansion Business Case, and Customer Experience Review Program. For the bike program, the Bike Share Program exceeded expectations. It became a regional initiative in which the city participated with significant input into the selection of the provider. It resulted in high uptake by the public with over 190,000 rides, covering over 360,000 kilometers traveled. Neuron, the provider, estimated the project injected $8.2 million into the region's economy. Compass Kitchener suggests an expansion of the service area and the launch of a public awareness campaign about etiquette and injury prevention. For pedestrian streets, they were also evaluated by Compass Kitchener. The Gaukel Block activation was supported by the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario. The Market District activation included midweek markets and concerts, urban agriculture programming, and seating. Both activations were serve as welcome community hubs for local programming. And Compass Kitchener suggests the city focus on ongoing community programming to ensure the spaces continue to be engaging. Also, the city should consider other areas to pedestrianize. And the Civic District Master Plan continues to be deemed an important project and initiative by the city. Many of its key ideas, including the addition of an educational institution, exploring residential uses, and the pursuit of public-private partnerships, are now featured in Growing Together. The text in the plan needs updating, though, to make it more current. adding it to the city website would be welcome. The downtown vision really impressed Compass in terms of the exceptional level of public engagement involved in developing the vision and the three key principles. The committee felt that the vision and three principles outlined were all very clear and well developed. What we would encourage, though, is for the city to update the Downtown Vision project page and the Downtown Strategy page to reflect the completion and approval of the new vision and the key principles. It's available elsewhere, but it would be great to see it added there. And it was a project which exceeded our expectations. The next one, a project which met our expectations, was the Mill Courtland Community Centre expansion and business case. There was, again, a really impressive level of public consultation, working with the community and users of the centre. The design elements that were proposed addressed numerous community needs, including accessibility and language considerations, as well as incorporating Indigenous design and sustainability initiatives. We thought the business case was really well researched, and the recommendations demonstrated innovation, as well as reflecting attention to inclusion and diversity. Compass Kitchener felt that the business case consultation process used in this particular instance would be a great model to build on for future recreation centre builds or renovations. It seems to have worked really well, and it's a model well worth building on. In terms of the customer experience review program, it identified three key areas that were in need of attention: the My Utilities widget, the accessing revenue / Kitchener Utilities access by phone, and the ActiveNet program that's used in our community centres. We were really impressed to see that 17 recommendations to improve service were implemented, and there are 19 more that are underway. So a really impressive level of change and improvement that was achieved. The committee was also really impressed with staff's efficient use of time and city resources, and also their avoidance of redundancy when addressing these improvements. There were opportunities to delay things slightly in order not to do double the work, and we really thought that was notable. Looking at the achievements that have been accomplished over the term of the 2019 to 2022 strategic plan, there is really a lot to be celebrated. There are now a total of 23 projects that have been completed, of which 10 exceeded and 10 met Compass Kitchener's expectations. As well, having met and transitioned through the unexpected outbreak of COVID-19, the city has returned successfully to pre-pandemic levels of activity, operations, and programming. In keeping with changes in the community as a whole, the city's also developed a policy framework to guide hybrid work where appropriate, which we think is a good area to have made advances in. It's evident that the city's public engagement processes continue to evolve and grow in their effectiveness. And there are also huge improvements to customer service, including, although it wasn't part of the strat plan, but the creation of the Customer Service Centre that you've just acknowledged the award for. So really, really impressive improvements. Overall, there we go. Overall, Compass Kitchener commends the city on the impressive advancement of its 2019-2022 strategic plan. The committee's evaluation report highlights key areas to pay attention to. First, housing affordability remains a serious concern. The city is encouraged to actively address homelessness through innovative solutions. Second, the development of an arts and culture master plan is deemed crucial to the growth of Kitchener. A vibrant local arts scene brings welcome vitality to our city, so concerted efforts to advance this vulnerable sector is urged. Third, sustainability and climate change strategies warrant continued attention, and the city is encouraged to continue its proactive efforts in this area of ongoing concern. Fourth, the city has done an excellent job with its public engagement and deserves particular praise for its use of the resident panel to inform the strategic plan. These efforts should continue. Fifth, Given public interest in financial accountability, Compass Kitchener encourages the city to share information where available to inform our evaluation process. Sixth, we believe the new adaptive strategic plan will enhance the city's ability to adapt and prioritize projects. Progress on the strategic plan should be transparently shared on the city's website to keep the public informed. And finally, Compass Kitchener strongly encourages Council to recognize the urgent need for action on the pressing issue of social isolation and loneliness within our community. By declaring social isolation and loneliness an epidemic, the City of Kitchener has the opportunity to lead the nation as the first municipality in Canada to acknowledge and address this critical public health issue. At a time when recognition of this crisis remains lacking at the provincial and national levels, the City of Kitchener can seize this opportunity to set a precedent and inspire other municipalities to follow suit, thereby catalyzing a nationwide movement toward combating loneliness, promoting social cohesion, and creating the conditions for a greater sense of belonging.
So in addition to commending the city on the successful completion of 23 projects within the strategic plan and the high quality of the work that's been done, Compass Kitchener also wanted to bring forward 3 recommendations, all of which really relate to continued work with the 2023 to 2026 strategic plan. The first is to maintain a focus on and continue to refine the key indicators of success associated with each of the 5 goal areas, and to use that focus to fine-tune priorities for data collection and analysis in order to provide staff and council with the best possible information on which to base decisions. That development of indicators hasn't always happened at the beginning of a strategic planning process with the city, and we think that it's really key to driving success and accountability. Secondly, given the complexity of issues faced and the rate at which change occurs, we encourage the city to be proactive, priority-driven, and to proactively adapt to change. Change is happening, it happens fast, and the new plan has created a great platform for responding to change, and we really encourage the city to build on that. Thirdly, we encourage the city to continue to actively support the evolution and growing effectiveness of its public consultation processes. We're seeing more and more effective results coming out of those. We also see more and more staff involved in the processes on a day-to-day basis. It'll be important for resources to be in place to support new staff as they take on those responsibilities. And that's our report from Compass Kitchener.
Wonderful. Well, first of all, let me thank both of you, and you've both been in your respective roles for several years now, and I see a lead there as well from the committee. So thank you to the 3 of you as well as all the others on the committee for the diligent work that you do. Since you've been here before, you know I often mention that. Very few, if any, other city that I'm aware of actually has a committee like Compass Kitchener, and it speaks to the value that both our administration and our respective councils over the years have put in this process, but also a comfort level to have a citizens committee that comes in and gives honest feedback to council about the work that they're doing. And I'll say, over the years, I think you've never disappointed with that honest feedback, both in terms of the things that we're doing well, as well as some that we can maybe do a little better on. And I think that's how we build a better community going forward. There are several members of council with questions, so I'll go to them first, and then I do have one as well. And so we'll start with Councillor Johnson. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you both for your presentation. I look forward to this every time that you're here. I learn so much, and I just thank you for all the work that you do in our community to help, we sometimes can drink our own Kool-Aid, right? And think that, that we're incredible and doing really great things, which I still believe that we're doing. But I really appreciate having the focus that you do on it to have kind of that bigger kind of outside view in. And I think it's terrific. So I was writing notes as you were talking. The very first thing that I was getting from most of the things that you're saying is that it sounded like we could do a better job on communication, which is something that I talk about. We've got great things going on. How do we tell people about them? And how are we improving the things that are not so great as well? Can you expand on that a little bit for me, please?
I think we live in a complicated environment in terms of communication. There's lots that can be done online, through the city's website, through social media, but there are also lots of folks who are not necessarily accessing information primarily through those avenues. So I think it's a question of also working with the community centers and the other face-to-face interchanges that the city has with people as ways of sharing information and gathering feedback.
Exactly, and getting in front of people that we don't necessarily always hear from. I totally agree with. And I liked your 3 things you wanted us to do as a focus. And Troy, I love the data collection and analysis. Totally agree with you on that. Sorry, it's not just you. I apologize.
That's right. It's a team effort.
Since I know your background, I know kind of where that's coming from. That's amazing. I mean, as a council, we really believe in making evidence-based decisions as well. So how do you see us maybe doing better on that one?
I think a lot of it is achieved through the process that has already started with this round of a new strategic plan, and that is to, right from the beginning, begin to identify what the criteria, the indicators of success will be for each of the 5 goal areas. And having identified those, that then tells us what kind of data we need to have. And I know data collection becomes a complex and big process, but I think there are opportunities to keep refining that, use those key indicators as guidelines for where we need to place highest priority in making those changes. I don't know if you would add to that.
I'll just add that I think many kudos to this city staff for taking this on and for engaging us and themselves in a process of identifying outcomes. I think one of the biggest challenge for any organization, local government or otherwise, is to actually measure outcomes as opposed to just easy measures like outputs. There's a distinction there. And I think it's quite a huge commitment that the city has made to evaluate outcomes and engage in that process. So that's well underway, which I think is fantastic.
That's awesome. Well, that will help guide my questions with staff in that on different initiatives too. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Councillor Johnson. Next up, I have Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Judy and Troy, thank you for coming out and presenting this great report, better than any report cards I've probably got in a long time. A few things stood out to me, and so you mentioned, you highlighted Gaukel Street and the pedestrianization of that street, and looking at more pedestrian-friendly streets. Are there any recommendations, any suggestions, any ideas of what other streets we could make, like Gaukel? Anything come out from this?
Do you want to speak to that? Go ahead. I don't think we as a committee have discussed particular locations per se. Certainly looking at the 2 projects that were before us this time, we were really impressed with the impact of the pedestrianization. And in light of the need for attention to social isolation and loneliness, I think developing streets like that are hubs for residents, community members, whether you actually know people well or not, there's a sense of familiarity and comfort that develops and a sense of belonging. And so I think being attentive to where those can work well and building them across the city is a really good plan.
That's perfect, and I agree wholeheartedly with you. I think the benefits that come from those streets in that core are incredible. I think they bring people together. And, you know, social isolation and loneliness, you know, I hear on a daily basis in my line of work with seniors and people in care facilities. And so it's not really surprising, given what has transpired since the pandemic. And so I think it's really important that, you know, as a city, and I think we do a really good job of trying to bring our community members together for events downtown or events at our community centers. And so I definitely, pardon me? Neighbors Day, and I think it's an important part of our being. And so I agree that we need to focus on that going forward. The waste division strategy didn't do anything. So was there a reason why that wasn't successful?
I think, and that was one that we reviewed earlier. That's not one of the current projects we've just looked at. But I think it's one that really suffered as a result of some of what went on during COVID, and I think personnel changes. It ended up having a very narrow focus as a project, which in the end left us with some hesitation as to how impactful it actually was. But a good notion, but I think it fell at a difficult time.
Okay. And lastly, you know, our arts and culture master plan, I know a motion is coming forward to work on some arts and culture later on, you know, getting some more advocacy around that, because we see how fragile some of our groups are in this community. And so what strategy would you recommend to bring all levels of the community, not just Kitchener, but Waterloo and Cambridge and the townships on board to create a arts and culture master plan? Because it doesn't just benefit the city of Kitchener, it affects the whole region, it benefits the whole region. And so
and arts and culture really operates on a region-wide basis. There are no hard borders in terms of who goes to what performance or exhibition or festival. So I think there's a real need for collaboration. My understanding is that the work being done now is actually to look at an arts and culture strategy for a shorter period of time as kind of a first step. And I think part of that needs to be focusing on how to collaborate with the other cities and municipalities within the region of Waterloo. As you've seen in the media, we have huge issues in arts and culture in this community, as well as across the province and across the country. This is not Kitchener-Waterloo alone. But I think people are shocked, the people who work in that sector, with the actual impact post-COVID. Everyone thought the worst of it was during COVID. It's not. It's with us today.
And I think it's important to have, you know, those facilities in place to, you know, to combat, you know, isolation and loneliness. And so you're right. I agree with you that it's going to take the whole region, not just one or two cities, to look at, you know, creating a hub for arts and culture. So again, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Deneau. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the report. I like the list of all the, no, I've lost the slide deck, but I think there were eight items that you say we should be focusing on. But one of the things I recall from previous reports that you've presented is the public engagement piece. There seems to be less attention to it in this particular report, although you do mention it. Can you elaborate a bit more on that and what your findings were?
I think what we've perceived is we're seeing some greater effectiveness in public engagement processes, but we're also seeing, with the engagement of more and more staff who don't necessarily have experience with it, there's a huge benefit in making resources available so that everyone who is called upon to design and lead a public engagement process is really well equipped and is comfortable, so that they bring to the process that openness to diverse perspectives and community dialogue that a successful process needs to have.
Right. I think one of the concerns in the past was the virtual engagement versus the in-person. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
I'm not sure about the past comments, but I would say that I think if we're going to reach people and engage them, that a variety of approaches are necessary. I do again want to underscore how impressive and innovative it was for the City of Kitchener to engage in the resident panel. I know that I've talked to colleagues in other municipalities who don't do anything similar to that, who have been really impressed by the things that I've been sharing with them. So I suspect that many municipalities are going to follow the lead of the City of Kitchener in that regard and follow suit with a similar process. So that being more of a face-to-face engagement with residents.
Right.
And also with the development of this strategic plan, one of the forms of engagement that was new this time was street interviews done by a team of 3 people who were hired by the city to go to the places where people gather. And what we found was that there were people there who said, you know, I would never have done that phone survey because it's too long and I just don't have time for that. But I really welcome the opportunity to comment on a couple of things. So creating different structures for exchange, I think, is important.
Okay. My last question has to do with the affordable housing component. So as we know that every level of government really has a responsibility to address this, can you just speak to it as from a municipal, lower tier municipality, and what the expectations there are?
We recognize that there are jurisdictional issues and that the municipality is not in the business of creating affordable housing, but there are roles that the city can play and has been playing. I think, number one, the process that was initiated with the development of the strategy and the working group that was created was to create a base of data, and keeping that data current is really key. Looking at possible provision of land, which I know the city is engaged in a process of reassessing properties it has and determining if any of them might be suitable for affordable or supportive housing purposes. I think there's also an educational component. As well as helping solve the problem, I think there's an educational piece to help the public understand who does what in terms of solving the problem, because I think the city probably hears disproportionately from residents because you're the closest tier of government to them, but there are clearly different levels of responsibility and different focal tasks within each, and not everyone understands that.
Right, good point. So thank you, and thank you to you and your team for bringing this to us today.
Thanks so much, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, and thank you, Judy and Troy, for your presentation. I always love this report when it comes to us every year. It really kind of pulls everything together and underscores all the important things that are going on in this community. I'm particularly interested right now today on the downtown vision and the pedestrian first streets, the correlation between the two. I know that there's a lot of new pieces in the vision, and I'm curious if you see any benefit when we talk about people, loneliness, and combating all of that sort of thing. What do you see the downtown as being? Do you see it as being a walkable street someday, or do you see it as being a number of little pockets in the downtown core, similar to what Toronto is like with all their districts?
You want to speak to that?
Sure. Yeah, I think what's important here is to really take seriously the idea of placemaking and thinking about downtown Kitchener as a destination for people to experience the city. And so whether that means pedestrianizing a large segment of King Street or portions of it, kind of like we did with Cockle Street, I think these are all positive movements toward that idea of positive placemaking. So I'm not sure what the answer is. I know that certainly when we talk to a delegation of the different advisory groups with the city, there seemed to be a lot of enthusiasm around pushing the city on pedestrianizing King Street. And I do know that there was a partnership, was it a year ago or so, with 880 Cities, an organization in Toronto that came and activated the space for a weekend or so. That struck me as being highly successful in terms of, again, making it a destination. So I would certainly encourage the city to consider these types of activations.
Yeah, thank you for that. The downtown core has always been a struggle to try to get it right. I mean, we just about get there, we were just about there, and then COVID comes, and then we have all different other things. So, yeah, okay, I appreciate your report.
If I could just add one more thing too, I think that COVID, sometimes I worry that we squandered the lessons from COVID. And if you recall, there were a lot of amazing activations that happened, not just here, but in other cities, where, I'm thinking of the city of Guelph, for instance, that shut down its downtown and opened it up to pedestrians. And I remember at the time people speaking about, this feels like Europe. But then we seem to lose that lesson. And so I just would encourage City Council to really think about what it was like back then and how engaging that environment was for residents.
And how interesting it is and attracting for the suburbs, people in the suburbs to come down and spend some time. Right now, it's not. And I really appreciate the conversation that we've just had and the report that you've done. And hopefully we'll be able to get that right this time. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next up, I have Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Judy and Troy, for the presentation. So I always look forward to this too, because I don't know, it's like Councillor Johnson said, right? It's sometimes you focus too much on the forest, sometimes individual trees, and it kind of checks in the health of both of those. And one of the things I always look forward to is the areas that you suggest we pay attention to. And again, the one that sticks out to me really that my colleague Councillor Deneau pointed out is the social isolation and loneliness. And I think a lot of us would agree that that really is, it's a growing issue, and it is a breeding ground for depression, which is self-harm, and also I think extremism in a lot of senses, which is societal harm. And it's not really the committee's job to come up with solutions, but has there been any look into any way that we can sort of combat this? I know we have our our Neighbors Day, which is great, but we still, even when I go around to talk to the neighbors, a lot of them will tell me, the ones that are hosting, I really wish more of my neighbors would come out and participate, but it's a real challenge. So are you just highlighting it for us to figure it out, which in turn we will pass on to our staff to figure out, or do you have any best practices that you've noticed?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. The first thing that I think the city ought to do, as we recommended, is declare it a crisis. I think that would actually position the city of Kitchener to be a leader nationally. Last year, people may not know, but in 2023, the U.S. government declared it an epidemic in the United States. I'm quite familiar with the data on social isolation and loneliness, and I can tell you that it's the same situation in Canada. And in fact, I would characterize it as a pandemic. It's everywhere, and it touches everyone. So I think the first step would be declare it a crisis, because awareness is really important. I don't think people appreciate how many people are in this situation. And though I didn't bring the stats today, it is quite remarkable how many people among us in this room feel lonely or isolated or both on a daily basis. It's quite disconcerting. So I think, when I look at the latest strategic plan, there are a lot of initiatives that are already underway to address it. But I think to focus it more specifically, all these initiatives, knowing that it's addressing what we've declared as a crisis, will move those, more efficiently towards solving it.
Okay, thank you. It is the one, and again, with varying degrees of communication, I think a lot of all the other items and the paying attention to, I think they're either well in hand or, we're being concerned about it, but that is the one that crops up in the awareness piece, so thank you for that.
And it is an area that we did hear from residents about in the survey, in the 1,000 household survey, that it is an issue, and it's certainly something that we're aware of in our discussions about community centers and the way they work with their immediate communities, because there is a wonderful resource that can be further developed. And Compass is really fortunate, having heard those concerns, to have someone like Troy who has this particular knowledge base and expertise. So that's been a real asset for us as we look at the issue.
Okay, next up I have Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Mayor Urbanovic, and thanks, Judy, and thanks, Troy, for coming in. As others have alluded to, I think I'm finally getting over my anxiety as growing up when report cards come, because these ones are always so good. I guess one of my questions is with regards, and if I can't recall the last time, didn't we used to get grades?
Yes, you did. Years ago, you did. With the current strategic plan, we have not done grades. We moved to the exceeds, meets, and does not meet expectations model.
Okay.
Did you like grades better?
I love grades. Because I never got that many A's before. So. But one of the things, too, that I wanted to touch base on is I don't think the public understands how much work that's gone into this and how many programs that the city operates in such a short time to have and execute these and to have these results as quickly as they are. There's always that City Hall doesn't move, and the reality is for some things that's true, but for overall this says otherwise.
It does, and I think that's part of why Compass for years pushed to have the progress made under the strategic plan tracked on the website as a starting point, so that it used to be strategic plans sat on someone's shelf. Everyone worked hard to produce them, and they sat on a shelf, and occasionally they got dusted off. They're clearly a much more meaningful document to the city and are actively used and relied on. And I think that there's a real opportunity, I think, to build on informing people about the plan and about the progress on the plan, so that if someone's really interested in a particular issue, it's easy to flip through material on the website and say, okay, on affordable housing, what's the latest report? We've really pushed to sort of say, what's the most current report people can look at?
Okay. Well, again, thank you to you and to the rest of the members of the committee. You know, it's definitely one of those times of the year that, you know, it's really good to see where, you know, we here on around the Horseshoe, we conduct a lot of business, but it's not always, you don't always get to hear how well we're doing and everything else. Not all the time, but I mean, it's good when it comes from residents and they go about doing it. It's a really good story for us, and we do appreciate the amount of work that the committee does. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ioannidis. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thanks you, Mr. Mayor. Although I was away from my seat, I was in the back room listening. It's televised in the back as well in caucus. So I had to deal with another matter, and I was listening to it and hearing my colleagues go into depth to understand, again, you know, how Compass Kitchener comes with his findings, recognizes the importance of work that, you know, your committee does, and how it's important to City of Kitchener, how we're guided by it as well. That on top of it, I think really it's you know, appreciative at the same time, you know, real booster towards our staff as well as council, the fact that we achieve the metrics that's set out by Compass and Kitchener. And one of the things that I would love to see, and you know, we talk about it, one of the reasons why we go in depth about comments, it's not that we all love hearing our own voices, maybe that's partly true, but it's also we hope that the media picks up on some aspects. So the good news that happens here at City Hall, the good work that happens here for our citizens gets pointed out to them, and there's more awareness happening. Sadly, these are the good stories that get missed out because they're not sizzling enough. So what I think is a good opportunity for us to do, and this is something I'm going to converse with staff further, when Compass Kitchener comes forward with a report, I think we have to take it upon ourselves to report those findings through Kitchener Citizen. That's one revenue that we use as councillors to communicate with our citizens. Yes, it comes at a small cost, but awareness of our citizens, of the good work and investments that are being made, is it bigger value than that small cost as well? But thank you very much for being able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Singh. I just want to, there's nobody else in the queue. I just want to follow up on Councillor Davies' comments on social isolation and loneliness. Oh, sorry, there is. Ayo. Councillor O'Dooney. Thank you.
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say a big thank you to both of you coming in and for your presentation. I'm still, I don't want to use the word stuck, but caught around the whole social isolation piece. I'm just interested in hearing if there is any, I know you mentioned the United States has also declared this. I don't know if the word was pandemic or endemic. I'm not sure which one you used. But what are some things that can be done or should be done to be able to really help? I mean, yes, we can create events and create things, but we can't pull people to those events. So that's where I was a bit stuck on. I felt we were already doing things that could help reduce or eliminate some of those social isolation symptoms, but just wanted to get your thoughts around that.
Sure. Thanks for that question. The U.S. Surgeon General, which put out the declaration that it's an epidemic in the U.S., identified 7 different strategies that I guess communities can take on to address the issue. One of the major ones that would be relevant to the city of Kitchener is the idea of social infrastructure. So Judy had mentioned community centers. We've talked about streets. Any sort of opportunity to help residents, inhabitants of Kitchener bump into each other and engage with one another is really important. And so, thinking about these spaces and how important it is to invest not just in general infrastructure, but that social infrastructure that is specifically aimed at engaging people is really crucial.
Thank you.
So there's I heard a little sidebar question here about, do you know offhand what the 7 are?
Oh, boy.
If not, can you send them to us afterwards?
I can do that, yeah.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so all that actually leads to the question that I was going to ask, and it also is related to the social isolation and loneliness piece. But there's another piece that has been coming up consistently, I can tell you, in my conversations with the big city mayors, with our colleagues in other orders of government, and we're seeing it play out not only in Canada, but in fact around the world. And I think the two are actually interlinked, and Councillor Davey even touched on it briefly in his comments, and it's just the growing polarization in society, that there isn't a lot of gray anymore. Everything is coming in, right or wrong, black or white, no desire to talk and try to find a happy middle ground anymore. And I'm wondering if the committee reflected on that at all, and do you see a correlation there? And particularly on that piece, are there things you think we need to tackle? Because that, I can tell you, if there's sort of one thing that, there's a few things that keep me up at night, but that's one of them, quite frankly. And I'm just wondering if you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I will say that there absolutely is a correlation between the two, that it's not surprising in an age when we've never been lonelier as a species, that people, which is ironic, by the way, that we live in a time where we can connect easier than ever before in humanity, that we feel lonelier than ever. But it's not surprising that when people feel lonely, they seek out any sort of connection that they can make, because we know that as human beings, we are hardwired to connect with other people. And so people in that situation are very prone to radicalization, to extremism. And I think that, again, this initiative is important to individuals in terms of their health and well-being, just thinking about the consequences of loneliness to their health and well-being, but also as a community. It's not surprising that there's greater incivility right now when we don't really know each other and we dehumanize people. It's harder to dehumanize them when you see people and interact with them. So the more that we can do to engage those individuals, I think, the better it is for our community.
For sure. I mean, I think we see that in social media as well. Being here face to face with each other, there's things I would potentially, well, not that I would do them on social media either, but there's things that, we would never say to each other face to face, but all of a sudden when we become a keyboard warrior, we feel somehow that it's okay to do it.
Sorry,
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's much easier to empathize somebody when you're in person and you're hearing from them and realizing that they're an actual human being. So,
absolutely.
It was very interesting, if I can add one comment, to watch
Please.
through the resident panel process We brought over 40 people together by the time you had Compass Kitchener and city staff, but we sought out 40 residents from diverse backgrounds, and it was a wonderful example of developing civil discourse, which was respectful, where people listened, and it was a question of having the skills to facilitate the group dialogue and shape it in a way that encouraged openness, encouraged listening, and created simplified tasks that could be addressed in terms of building consensus. And as we watched the meetings of that group of people, the skill base and the ability to interact, communicate, and find common ground grew exponentially with each additional meeting. It was really remarkable to watch. And I think that's the sort of thing we really want to nurture as a community, so that there is more open social discourse. Differing views can be shared, but we can find ways that identify what we most commonly share.
Exactly. Okay, well, thank you again to both of you and the rest of the committee for all of your great work, and look forward to future input in future report cards.
We thank you for your receptiveness to both our good news and our needs some more thinking items. We really welcome the fact that you listened to both. We couldn't do what we do without Sloan Sweezy and Alison Remillard, who keep us on track and provide all the resources we need. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, and thank you to Sloan as well for becoming the new staff support. And there is a question for staff, Councillor Ioannidis.
It could relate to the delegates too.
Oh, okay. Hold on.
I just, out of, seeing how, going through this process and seeing that communication is always an issue, I'm just wondering, how does this get broadcasted out to the community, this report?
So they can
there is a press release.
Yeah, so they can take a little piece of it, and then I'll maybe ask Ms. Rowland to comment on it.
Pardon me?
I'll ask Ms. Rowland to comment on that.
Through the mayor, can I just clarify, are you asking about the Compass Kitchener news release specifically, or just storytelling in general?
As speaking with Councillor Michaud, we've always had these really good reports, and I feel like the public is not very well in tune to what we're doing with this in regards to this report. So how do we broadcast? How do we broadcast this, or should we do something? Should we provide a budget to it or something like that, just to get that out there?
Through the chair. So I think that there's a couple things we can do. As far as the Compass report goes, we have a news release lined up for later this afternoon or tomorrow morning, and we share it through our social channels. As far as storytelling in general goes, I think this is something that my team is working on, and I actually have an email drafted for all of you to highlight some of the storytelling we've been doing, a little bit differently in the past year or so. Video storytelling, longer format storytelling on our, on our website, and a whole bunch of different things. So we are telling the stories, although I think it's challenging to reach all the audiences, because not everyone is tuned into our social channels, not everyone is tuned into our website. So we continue to explore different avenues, and part of my email will explain that to you in more depth.
Okay. I know you're always endeavoring to do a lot more, so we're very appreciative of everything that you do. Just my last question is there a way to put a link to this so that the public can look at this report?
Yep, that will be included in the news release.
All right, awesome. Okay, thank you.
Okay, additional questions? Councillor Johnson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, with your indulgence, would we be able to clap for this report and thank all of our residents and the team that worked on this?
Sure, we'll let you do that.
Thank you.
The last one, hold on, there's still one more. Councillor Singh. Okay, Ms. Rowland, another question for you? kind of like, the pre-summer break. So I kind of thought, like, end of school year, I thought I'd allow you to go rebel on us. Ms. Rowland. Oh, sorry, Councillor Singh.
Ms. Rowland, so in my early comments, what I said, similar to Councillor Ioannidis' concern, I don't, in the conversations, a lot of questions get raised when we are campaigning or having conversations with the constituents. Hey, what's the City of Kitchener doing? So clearly the news releases or the media reports don't always have the uptake that we would hope. And then, of course, the information that's on our website doesn't always get deciphered as well as we would want our residents to be in the know. So one of the points that I had made is perhaps we can publish the Compass Kitchener report in Kitchener Citizen. Is that something that staff have looked at in the past? Because again, my point, the reason why I made that point was it gets distributed to 60,000 plus households across the city. Is that something staff have looked at already?
So through the mayor, that's not something that we've specifically looked at, although I can take that away with my team and staff. We do publish Kitchener Life and Active Kitchener as hard copy publications to most of the households in the City of Kitchener. So those are hard copy publications, and they go through direct mail and also through the Kitchener Citizen. We're also exploring different avenues of communication, like partnerships with influencers and stuff. So we certainly are looking at different ways to reach our audience, but I will take away your suggestion to look at publishing the Compass Kitchener report.
Okay, so perhaps that's something that you can give an update to all of council as to what kind of costs we would be looking at.
Sure.
Or the feasibility of it. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay, that appears to be all the questions now. Thank you again, everybody. Okay, moving on then, we'll move on to item 7.1.B and C, which is a notice of intention to demolish an heritage conservation agreement. And we have two staff here, Ms. Drake and Mr. Stevenson, and we have one delegation, Vaughn Bender. So, Mr. Bender, if you want to come forward. Welcome, Mr. Bender.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon, members of council. Pleased to be here today to speak to this agenda item, and I do hope that you see it as another good news story. I do feel that many times when I'm here before council, it's when we're looking for guidance or advice from this group, and I think today it's a good news story. In that, and it's important that I wanted to be here as well to just acknowledge, the good collaborative process that is unfolding with respect to this heritage log structure, the Gale log home that we're calling it at this point, and to thank. First of all, I want to thank Councillors Chapman and Michaud as representatives of the Heritage Committee and members of council for taking time to come and to see this property. Okay, thank you. And also to acknowledge the collaboration with Mr. Garrett Stevenson and his team, and in particular Michelle Drake, the Heritage Planner, on this file. I think we've made a lot of good progress in the last number of months, and we have a good process set up to unfold in the months ahead. In interest of your time, I think I will dispense with my slideshow unless anyone would like to discuss any of the projects that are on the screen. I will just list them, the projects we have worked on together with the City of Kitchener, Heritage staff, the Heritage Committee in the past, our EB Estates project, which was really a restoration and adaptive reuse of a century-old stone farmhouse adjacent extracted gravel pit lands. We did receive the Mike Wagner Heritage Award for that effort, where we moved the building before restoration. The efforts made at our Wollaston site at Fisher Hallman and Huron Road, commemorating a section of Plains Road which was closed, and as well the restoration of another century-old stone house, what it looks like today. a project that's midstream right now, which is a century farmhouse, the Abram Clemens building, which is close to Fisher Hallman and Bleems Road, which we're incorporating into our subdivision that's being built in that area. This is a log structure which we have at our St. Jacobs Farmers Market site, which is giving us some insight into the preservation of that building, that log structure. And then this is the project before us right now. There's a large grading differential on this site and the surrounding community lands, some 75 feet of grading difference. And so I think you've been informed of the grading effort that needs to be made in order to build a more accessible and better outcome for the entire community design. And that is what necessitates the lowering of the earth beneath that house. This is the process we're in right now, which is terms of reference for the Heritage Impact Assessment for the Demolition, Stabilization, and Protection Plan, the Conservation and Relocation Plan, and looking forward to receipt of a Heritage Covenant Agreement draft, which we can work with then moving forward. So I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you very much. And we do have at least one question at this point. Couple. Councillor Ioannidis, you're up first.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Mr. Bender, for coming in and highlighting some of the work that Schlegel Developments have done over the years with regards to heritage. So just out of curiosity, and I know your organization has spent significant amount of dollars with regards to preserving heritage. What is the budget with regards to this project?
That's still to be determined. So we're meeting right now with house moving companies and log structure experts, and so working on that budget. We really see it as part of the larger project budget, and the effort's going to have to be made, and we want to make the effort. I don't want to say regardless of what it costs, but I mean we're gonna move it forward and try to absorb those costs as part of the project.
Okay. I mean, I just think it's really good to highlight the commitment that your organization has done with regards to heritage. Can you give us a highlight of the Mike Wagner Award that you received and how much that one cost to move? Because a lot of times it seems just say, hey, just move it. It's no big deal. But I think people don't understand, and residents may not understand, the amount of resources that it takes to do these things.
Yeah, again, we didn't split out all of the costs separately on that EB farmhouse that you're referencing. It was a 450-ton stone house. We lowered the earth around it, supported the structure, and then moved it. We built a temporary road. We graded the site all to support, moving that structure. I would say it's well in excess of $1 million probably invested in that project. The house that's on the screen here, the Wollaston farmhouse, again, in excess of $1 million that we've invested in that. And we think it's an important contribution to make to preservation of local history and farm history and so on. The first house that was on the screen, the EB house, we did sell that at the end of the day as a single-family home. We certainly sold it at a loss, but now it is set up for future protection and future use. This home on the screen is zoned for many different uses. Could be a restaurant, could be an office, could be a daycare. It's very, very close to Fisher Hallman Road, so really doesn't support it being a single-family home moving forward. But we would, at this point, we're looking to retain it and probably rent it out as a rental building in future for that future use.
Okay. Well, anyways, thank you so much for the work that RBJ Schlegel does with regards to heritage. Again, these are the stories that no one seems to share. They only seem to share the ones that aren't as nice. But we do have a lot of wins with regards to heritage, and just your organization alone has, significant impact in our community at significant cost and great value, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ioannidis. Councillor Chapman, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you again for coming in and for the tour. I mean, there were a few of us from Heritage that visited the site, the Gale site, and it really does sort of give it a different perspective. So I was wondering if you had any more information you could share with us regarding keeping this house on the property rather than moving it elsewhere.
Yeah, I would say I have no further information other than to say that very much, very clearly are hearing the comments that are being made by yourself and by staff and by other members of the Heritage Committee. So we understand there's a strong desire to see the property incorporated. Again, explanation, if you will, we were looking at the potential to relocate it to another opportunity, whether that's Dune Heritage Crossroads, if I'm getting that right, or the Steckley Heritage Farm or St. Jacob's Farmers Market, as a way to solve the matter of not yet knowing where its precise location could be. But I think with the process that's been established here to allow us to continue to work forward as we have, I think, in some other projects with the Heritage Covenant Agreement and interim location measures and so on, that gives us the opportunity to find that right spot on the property, working in collaboration with staff and with the committee and council. So we haven't made any progress in finalizing where that is. I mean, we're still waiting to hear back from the school board, where we just received comments on Friday from the region of Waterloo on our pre-application meeting, which was 7 or 8 weeks ago. So it's a bit of a weaving path that we're following here, but with the plan to have a temporary relocation to be able to facilitate earth moving and so on, then I think it leaves all the options open. So hopefully that's a bit of an answer.
Yeah, maybe we could have a heritage party on the site and we could help you find that perfect space.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. I don't have any questions, just comments. Can I?
Okay, we will come back to you. Actually, there's nobody else in the queue. Are you moving, or is Councillor Chapman moving the?
I was just going to say at the right time I'll move this.
Okay, if you want to move this, and then if you want to speak to it at the same time.
Sure.
And are you moving both recommendations, both Gale Street and this one?
Yes.
Okay.
Duke. Yeah.
And Councillor Chapman, are you seconding them? Sorry. Oh, sorry. Okay.
This is Gail.
Sorry. But there's two recommendations.
We're just talking about Gail.
Yeah, okay, but you're moving both of them, correct?
I'll move both. Do you have any? Okay.
Okay, Councillor Chapman, you're seconding them? Okay, thank you, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to thank Vaughn for coming out again today, and thank you for taking Councillor Chapman, myself, and Jean Hallblum on a tour. It wasn't just a tour of the house. You took us on a tour of some of the neighborhoods that you created over the years, and it was so enlightening and inspiring to see the work that can be done when it's done with thought and care for the community. Schlegel really does care about the community the communities they build, and you continue to care even after they're built. So I just want to thank you for this, and I absolutely approve this, and I look forward to seeing wherever it lands. I just know it's in good care. Thanks so much.
Okay, so it has been moved by seconded. I don't see anybody else in the queue. I actually just want to add my thanks, Mr. Bender, to the commitment that Schlegel has shown in the development of the southwest side of the city, and particularly to a number of heritage components, both discussed today and those handled previously, as you've done your work. So those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to item 7.3, which is the Shared Accommodation Bylaw, COR 2024-233, and the Addendum Report 2024-288. And I want to note that there have been written submissions from Nelson Chukwuma on behalf of Conestoga Students Inc., Nicole Lazick, Natalie Schneider, Dee Coulter, Andrew Dodenhoff, and Ann Lavender. And then we have a total of 9 delegations on this item. And I want to also remind Council that there has been some correspondence from staff in this regard to review that, and depending on the delegations and so on, we may need to break into camera for some more legal advice later on. So with that, we will start with our first delegation. I note that at least one of the delegations are appearing again today, and I just want to remind those delegations that who are appearing a second time that you should focus on any new information today as part of your delegation. And with that, we'll start with Don Cleland. Welcome, Don.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I appreciate being here and having the opportunity to speak to you today. There's a great many misconceptions about hosting on the Airbnb platform. I've heard it said that Airbnb pays a lot more than traditional renting, that it is easy money, and that it's taking away business from hotels and housing for tenants. I have heard concerns about problem guests in the house next door. People call them short-term rentals. I'm sure in some locations, people may make a lot of money from Airbnb, maybe in hot spots with lots of tourism. Kitchener is by no means one of those hot spots. For a 30-day stay in my beautifully updated one-bedroom apartment with in-suite laundry, I charge $85 a night. After deducting the monthly discount, paying Airbnb, HST, utilities, supplies, and extra necessary support, my income from that unit is $1,406. I hire local people who are supplementing their income by shopping, cleaning, and managing the unit. My occupancy rate averages about 80%, meaning I really don't take home $1,406 a month in that apartment. Financially, I would do far better by renting to a long-term tenant, but I like the flexibility and the control afforded by hosting. My property is always clean and perfect, and I have no tenant issues. Airbnb provides host damage protection and ensures I get paid. If a person causes a problem, Airbnb supports me in immediate removal of guests. The money is certainly not easy. Someone must be available at all times, just in case the guest requires help. The housing I provide is not short-term, rather it is transitional. We are doing an incredible service to our community and its economy. Immigrants never have to worry about online housing fraud when using Airbnb. My usual guests include a doctor who regularly does a night rotation at the hospital and needs quiet space during the day to sleep. I have immigrants moving here needing a safe place to land until they figure out the neighborhoods and find their new home. People who are getting major renovations in their homes or are between homes are also guests. I have students with allergies, grad students who need quiet to study. They're here for a semester and don't want to furnish an apartment or deal with a lease. There are no hoops to jump through. It is safe and clean. Airbnb holds guests and hosts accountable. If host standards are inadequate, they get bad reviews and will be contacted by Airbnb regarding remediation or possible removal from the platform. If guests don't follow the house rules, they too can be removed. Everyone is protected. I am opposed to the City of Kitchener requiring licensing to provide transitional housing. I know it is a thing to do, and maybe in some cities it makes sense. But our region has seen a huge amount of immigrants and students on our doorsteps. We are in a housing crisis. Most people with Airbnbs have some extra space and need a little extra money to supplement their income. They do not feel comfortable with the commitment nor vulnerability of having tenants. Most don't really want the business end of things, which Airbnb nicely handles. They may be looking at selling in the near future, and no tenants' rights make it impossible to promise vacant possession. Everyone has a different reason for hosting instead of renting. Whatever the reason, I believe the outcome of licensing will be fewer spaces for people to live in. As I read the proposed bylaw, I felt overwhelmed and very uncomfortable. The way it reads disallows renting parents to pay for their child's education or help pay by hosting their empty bedroom for the months they are in school. We see ourselves as a very inclusive community, and usually we are. However, this bylaw discriminates against poor people, uneducated people, tenants, students, immigrants, people who have any criminal record, including but not limited to an old DUI or signing a peace bond to avoid the expense of going to court. Heck, even carrying a pocket knife is now a criminal offense. This requirement includes spaces where you're not even sharing any living spaces with the guests. Many of our guests come from other countries where people in uniform beat, torture, and rape them. However, anyone that the manager of licensing wishes to send can come to a licensed property at any time, for any reason, to inspect the premises or enforce the bylaw. The enforcers are police officers. These guests from so many backgrounds have no right to say no to a stranger in uniform coming to the private space. A contravention of this bylaw can be fined up to $25,000 for an individual. On my insurance policy, this bylaw requires my liability insurance to cover not just me and mine, but also the City of Kitchener as an additional insured. So many things are redundant, as there are already requirements of Airbnb. We already must have someone available with additional Airbnb support 24/7. All security camera locations need to be identified on the listing, and none are allowed to be in any space where one would expect privacy. This bylaw will not allow people to stay longer than 3 months, and they need to book 1 month at a time. This creates a hardship for all guests, most especially students. I do not understand the logic or the reasoning for this arbitrary rule. It feels like this entire bylaw was taken from a bylaw from elsewhere and cut and pasted into our lodging house bylaw, trying to fix a perceived issue while exacerbating an issue we already have. I ask you to stop and think carefully about what you are doing and the impact you are going to have on this community. I know for certain I am not comfortable with the invasion and overreach I would be signing up for by acquiring a license, not to mention the additional expense. I am certain many hosts will opt out. You will have cut your transitional housing availability down substantially. The additional licensing cost and the opportunity afforded by a smaller pool of spaces will drive the prices up. Is this really your goal?
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions of the delegation? Okay, there don't appear to be any. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next delegation is Elisa Cleland.
So Alyssa is my daughter.
Oh, okay.
And at this point in time, she's blind, and her guide dog was taken in this morning. She's currently in critical care at the hospital. The guide dog, not my daughter, sorry. It's been a tough morning.
No problem. Take
But
your
I
time.
told her I would come here because she felt it was really important. I didn't really want to even come and do this presentation, but she felt it was important for the rights of people coming into our community. So I'm here. Anyway, please let me speak on her whatever behalf.
Yeah, no problem. Go ahead.
She has it written here for me. She says, I have a job. It is helping people co-host their listings. My job includes making sure the listing is safe, looking after cleaning schedules, and writing reviews on guests. I have worked for many years to perfect this job, and when I heard about what you were planning to do here, I sat down and cried. It is extremely difficult to get work as someone who doesn't see, and all the people I work for have said that they will shut down their Airbnbs due to the extra expenses and the onerous job of making things licensed. You are therefore taking me and many other people out of a job if you decide to move forward with this. This job is my only source of income other than my monthly ODSP check. Outside of this job, I volunteer on the Grand River Accessibility Advisory Committee and volunteer with seniors at a seniors home. Here are some reasons why people do not want to license their Airbnbs. Most people do not want to make it a business. Alyssa did a bunch of research on this. This is not from here, from home, it was research-based. Most people do not want to make it a business. Many have come to Airbnb because they had terrible experience with the Landlord and Tenant Act. They are doing this because they are in need of some extra income. They are not huge companies making lots of money. They simply can't afford a $750 licensing fee. Airbnb is much more costly than renting. You have to pay cleaners, Airbnb, and HST, which you would not have to do with a rental. Also, the amount of people you get is not always the same. For instance, on one month, your bookings for your listing may be full, whereas the next month they are only about half full. Airbnb already regulates much of what you are wanting to regulate. For example, there is a review process in place where you write a review after a guest or host leaves your listing. Hosts leave details such as how clean the guest was, how well they communicated, and how well they followed your house rules. Guests leave details like how clean it is, how safe it is, the responsiveness of the host, and the area and general maintenance of the listing. You rate them on a scale of 1 to 5 stars. If someone has a bad rating, they're at risk of being kicked off the platform, regardless of whether they are a host or guest. Also, when you set up the listing for the first time, you are required to state the safety features your listing has, such as smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, and fire extinguishers. I go through each listing with each new client I work with to make sure they have these safety features. Please think carefully about the decision you make with this. You may have a job you can go to each day, but not all people have that luxury. If you go forward with this, please make it so people who are on low income can afford what you are proposing. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today.
Thank you very much, Dawn, on behalf of your daughter, and please convey to your daughter our hopes and wishes for her service animal. We know it's how important they are for people who need that support. Councillor Michaud, you have a question?
Thank you for coming out today. You may have said this in your presentation. If I missed it, I apologize. So you highlighted your costs of everything. What is your insurance? Is your insurance more than it would be just a regular house because you have an Airbnb?
I have it. It is a triplex. I have it covered under triplex insurance coverage. So yes, it's more expensive than it would be for a regular house. I haven't included any of that. Those are normal costs. My costs to run an Airbnb is extensive. I've had lots of problems with tenants and neighbors, and it was very stressful. And even though I make less money, I would prefer to live like this than the other way, because at least I don't have to deal with problems.
And you live there? This is
No, I have a triplex that I rent out. And I used to have it rented, and I mean I've have other units. I have some that are rented to long-term tenants, and that's fine, you know. But and occasionally I'll get an Airbnb guest who wants to be a tenant, and that's great. Then they can become a tenant. But
so your triplex, you pay property tax.
Absolutely, I do.
Your Airbnb, you pay property tax.
I pay HST on Airbnb. So in other words, everything you see that comes in, we pay 13% on.
Right.
So 13% comes off our bottom line. Like I have the numbers. Actually, it's quite interesting because when I did it up, I'm like, holy cow. So at $85 a night, it's $2,550. I have a 3% host fee and a 15% discount per month, which takes me down another $459, brings me to $2,091 gross. HST on that would be $234.73, brings me down to $1,856.27 a month. There's $360 in utilities and supplies that I would not have to do if I had it rented, and $90 a month in support people. So the total money earned per month becomes $1,406, and that's if I have it rented for a month. It is an essential service. I don't think people realize how essential it is. You talk about social isolation. This makes it so people, when they come in, are embraced. They have contact people. They can ask, where do I go? How do I get? It's so warm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Councillor Stretch. Oh, don't leave yet. Sorry. Councillor Stretch.
Thank you. So I hosted an Airbnb for a while, currently don't, but did, so I'm aware of how it looks on the back end to be a host. So I just wanted to clarify a few things. So you are making $1,400 a month?
No, I'm not. When it's fully occupied,
Right.
that's how much this one bedroom it gets a month. When it's fully occupied, I am at an 80% rate on average. So no, it's,
So what's your max rate? You said $85 a night?
that's, yes, and that's on my most expensive unit. I have some that are $69 a night. That one has, like I chose my most expensive one, that has everything in it. It's in suite laundry, everything.
Okay, and you don't live there?
No.
And you said that you do hire out for cleaners and
I
for
do.
those things too. So one thing that I think it might have been in your daughter's comment, it's that difference between it being a business and it, being something else. The luxury of not having full-time renters. Can you just help me understand that a little better?
So if you have a tenant and they cause problems at your house, there is no insurance that will cover that. I mean, unless they cause major problems. But you are on that yourself. I've had a few opportunities to have people that seem very good, and they had issues. They had parties. They had lots of things. I have no control over that. I had one tenant that actually ran over a neighbor with her e-bike because she didn't like her. I couldn't do anything about that. All I could do to my neighbors was say, hey, listen, you need to call bylaw. I had no power. I felt completely stressed out all the time. I make less money, and I do a lot more work, and I manage a lot more, and I'm a lot less stressed. I feel like I own this house, and I feel like I can say things that are happening in that house, and I didn't feel that way when it was rented. And I also feel like it's a different, unique service, and I love it. I love helping people. I love that feeling of, yeah, you need something, I can tell you where to go, how to get there. Like, that's unique. It's special.
Oh, go ahead.
I think I turned it off, sorry. And my last question is around your experience with Airbnb. I've had being a guest and a host having challenges. What is your experience like, especially if you're seeing a high turnover of guests? That's a lot of guests to host.
It used to not be very good. Frankly, it was not. The last year, they've upped their game a lot, and there's a lot better support. It's 24/7, so there's always somebody there. I have a contact line I can call. If I feel like I'm in danger and trouble, I have to press a link on my app, and it will come up, what's your issue? And we can make immediate contact for them, and they help out right away. They contact me immediately, or actually answer the phone. So it's great. It actually feels good.
Okay, thank you. Next up, I have Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I have a question. So you rent one bedroom and your take home, if we can call it that, if it were fully occupied, is $1,400 a month. But you said it's a triplex. So does that mean you've got like 5, 4, how many bedrooms?
I have
do you rent
3 legal apartments. So they're actually not rooms. They are apartments. They are legal. And they're in a triplex.
So each one is
an apartment, self-contained apartment.
Right, but in each one you run as an Airbnb.
Each one is run as an
In that
Airbnb.
house. Okay.
And when I have somebody that I feel confident with having as a tenant, I do afford that opportunity, but I get to try before I buy, and I like that.
Right. So I guess do you think you'd get over $4,000 a month in rent if you were to rent it out
If I rented that apartment out, I would easily get $1,600 a month. It is gorgeous. It's got 2 patios, and like the others aren't the same amount of money. I gave you the most expensive one. Some are $75 a month. That's my most expensive one, but it is drop dead gorgeous.
Right. Okay, my second question had to do with, is your biggest concern the cost of the licensing? Is that your biggest concern here?
My biggest concern is the overreach and the impact is, the licensing is a problem too, the cost of licensing because it's going to drive it up. But the overreach, the impact it's going to have on my guests, there's a lot of timid people that come here. You don't see their faces. I do. And a lot of fear that we don't understand because we've never lived their lives. But we have a lot of broken people that come to our city. And with the large amount of immigrants we're getting, it's even more so. So I don't want that. I'm not comfortable with that. I just think it's wrong.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Singh.
Hey, a couple questions. Like I can appreciate, what you're advocating for and you not wanting to change of what you're able to do right now in your current operation, and this adds additional layer of complexity and potentially some cost. But you said that the impacts to your guests. What would be some of those impacts that you perceive?
Well, the impacts that I perceive, first of all, it's going to be a lot more money. It's going to be a lot more expensive. There's going to be a lot fewer people doing this. So that's going to drive the prices up because there'll be fewer people on the platform. When there were less guests, per se, when there were more less accommodations, the prices were higher. I'm talking about $50 a night for most places. You actually could make pretty good money here. Now it covers itself and does a little bit more. But the other thing is the fact that my guests, I can't guarantee them their space is not going to be invaded. I can't guarantee them that nobody's going to come and want to poke through. Sometimes we have guests that they stay for 4 months. A student.
Sorry if I can interject. Where do you see a scenario where someone would come and
in the bylaw. In the bylaw, it says that I quoted it directly. It says that, I'm sorry, there's, it says that the quote unquote, the manager of licensing can send they can send somebody into a licensed property at any time for any reason to inspect the premises or enforce the bylaws. And in another section, it said the enforcers are police officers. So that's what it says. That's what the bylaw says.
It would be bylaw officers, but so additionally, I don't want to get into that argument. I'm just trying to understand where you see some of the concerns. Aren't your guests required to follow many other guidelines that, as a host, that you can set forward? I mean, this is just be one extra
Absolutely.
guideline, or
Absolutely.
is it a free flow that someone, as a guest, they can come and they have access to your space and they can do whatever? My assumption is they have to follow certain rules already, isn't it the case?
Well, yeah, the rules would look like you can't smoke in the unit, you can't have parties in the unit, you can't do this or that in the unit, but nobody ever goes into the unit, ever. Unless there's a problem, they call us, and then we go and help, like we have an air conditioner that's not working. Okay, no problem, we set up a time with them, we go in, and we remediate. And if there's somebody else, and we're very, very, very conscious of the fact that these people are strangers in our community, and that we need to be very sensitive to that. And so we will communicate with them and make sure they know who's coming and exactly who they are and when they're coming so that it's not frightening.
I can clarify this through staff. As a host, would you be comfortable if a notice is given so that at least the property can be inspected, but a notice is a courtesy notice is provided? Would that alleviate that concern that you have?
I think that we need. If this is a conversation we're having, I think it doesn't belong in the lodging bylaw. I think 6 of 1, I mean, it's just not the same thing. I think if you're planning on doing a lodging bylaw, do a lodging bylaw. This is not a lodging bylaw. This is more of a transitional housing. Lodging is where people come, they stay in other people's homes, they live together in a one unit, and they share space. Airbnbs are not always that way. You've got two different kinds.
I'll just ask you one last question. Are you comfortable with the regulations that hotels and motels, short-term accommodations, like businesses that they have to operate under as business licenses? They have very similar costs and additional they probably feel it, but egregious guidelines that they have to follow as well. How would you see the difference?
We have a very different thing than a hotel. A hotel has a big building with many rooms, and their costs are actually all conglomerated in one group. I don't know how much their costs are per unit, but if you take an apartment condo and then you take an apartment townhouse, or you take a single family unit, the costs are all very different. We pay more money per unit to run our units than a hotel would.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for coming out this afternoon. It is this afternoon still. So I'm hearing a lot about the visitors' rights, people who are coming in, using the services, and the concerns about some of their privacy, some intrusion concerns. What about the neighbors that live around that area?
They're the luckiest people on earth.
So during my campaign 2 years ago, I heard about Airbnbs, and the concerns were strangers, 2 houses down from them, parties, parking issues. And so where did the rights come in place of people who are staying for a month or so?
So if they're truly, that doesn't happen in anything I have, because everything has its own parking space and everything is well done. My places look better than anyone's because it's all well groomed, because Airbnb really demands that. Any place that's like that, there should be a complaint made to Airbnb, and Airbnb will do something about it. A lot of times it's just fear. It's not really things that have happened. I'd love to know how many times we've had fires that's in an Airbnb compared to fires that's in an apartment that's a normal rental. I don't really see a whole lot going on. I'd love to see how many times we've had actual issues with Airbnbs in this city. Has there been any study done on that compared with tenanted properties? Truly, I have very rarely seen Airbnb guests cause problems, especially in the last, like I say, year and a half, because the Airbnb have come down very hard on people.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and I know one of the other delegates spoke at our last meeting, and assured us that her properties are, and I have no doubt that they're not, that they are upstanding, but there are those who are not, and unfortunately, the good have to pay for the bad sometimes. And so my concern is about the neighborhood. My concern are about the neighbors who are concerned, who are reaching out to me saying, I don't know who these people are. So they, would you agree they have to, their concerns also have merit as well?
Well, I have to tell you, everyone's concerns have merit, but if it's a false concern, if it's a groundless concern, if it's, I don't know my neighbor, well, a lot of us don't know our neighbors, but if it has base, if it has foundation, I would be very surprised how many of those people you talk to have actually got a reason to be scared. I know my neighbors are much better off now than they were before. I had a lot of phone calls, and actually that's why I went to Airbnb platform, because I had so many problems, I had no power to fix so many complaints. Just because people stay there for a long period of time does not make them great.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, those are all the questions we have.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cleland. Next up is Ann Lavender. Welcome, Ms. Lavender.
Thank you. I'm getting old. It takes me a long time to hobble down to the microphone these days. Thank you for this second opportunity to speak about the shared accommodations bylaw. When I last spoke, my remarks were focused on the services offered by an Airbnb host, and today I'll focus more on the bylaw. I'll also touch on the differences between rooming houses and short-term rentals and why some of the requirements that you're making in the bylaw will absolutely put me out of business. Airbnb hosts are very proud of their rental units. We furnish and decorate them so that guests will feel at home. We take pride in the way they look inside and out. Our properties are the ones on your street that are always mowed, that have always got their sidewalks and driveways cleared, that never have old furniture sitting outside on the front lawn or driveways waiting for the garbage pickup day. You wouldn't know that they're Airbnbs to look at them. We are keenly aware that a poor guest review can shut us down and that a single complaint by a neighbour can do the same. We're careful about who we host because we have a lot to lose. I completely understand the need to impose some rules on the hundreds, perhaps thousands, of rooming houses that have suddenly sprung up in our city. But please don't confuse these with Airbnb short-term rentals. They're completely different in every way. I encourage Council to move forward with the rooming house inspections and licensing. And as you know, I don't oppose licensing of STRs, short-term rentals, either, but some of the requirements are problematic. Thank you to staff for increasing the number of bedrooms from 3 to 4, but there are many family groups arriving from overseas that require 5 bedrooms. You'll remember when the Syrian refugees came to our community, they came with very large families, and I was asked to consider housing a family of 9 and a family of 7 in what had been a single-family home at one time. I declined because I thought that was too many people in one building. But there are still large families coming to this community. Often it's a younger couple with 2 or 4 young children and 2 sets of grandparents because they're resettling here as an extended family unit. A house with 5 bedrooms would be perfect for them until they figure out what part of the city they want to settle into. Also, there's a requirement that sofa beds would not be made available, and yet hotels and motels are allowed to have sofa beds, so we'd like the same consideration, please. Licensing fees. So the proposed licensing fee of $750 is too high. I manage a total of 5 units. 4 of them are mine. Only one of them is in my principal residence. The proposed licensing fees would cost me $3,450 for the first year and $2,325 for the second year, assuming the fees aren't increased. These are for properties that were legally duplexed and inspected in 2015, 2016, and 2019. As regards insurance, I'm still working to get a definitive answer, but it seems likely that even though I already have $2 million liability insurance through a residential policy on each property, the city's requirement that it be indemnified can only be achieved through a commercial insurance policy which will double the cost of insurance from $7,500 a year to $15,000 a year. This is not a requirement in Hamilton, in Toronto, or in Montreal. And I'm referring to the indemnification piece, not the amount of liability insurance. So in addition, the instant our insurance switches from residential to commercial, we'll be forced by our insurer to hire commercial snow removal companies that also have commercial insurance, rather than the teenager next door who's counting on that money. That will increase snow removal costs from $3,000 per winter to close to $9,000 per winter for the same 3 properties. So, do you all have a pen handy? My costs will increase by $16,950 in the first year and $15,825 in the second year. You may remember that at my last presentation, I shared that I net approximately $1,200 per month after all expenses are paid. This revenue from all 5 units supplements my CPP benefits. It adds up to $14,400 a year, and it means that I don't have to go to the House of Friendship's food hamper program every month. Oh yes, and let's not forget that my property taxes have increased by $700 just in 2024. And that I pay a 4% accommodations tax on all my stays, along with income tax and HST on stays of less than 31 nights. Rooming houses are in a different category altogether. They earn more than short-term rentals. Even at $800 per month per student, rooming houses with 4 bedrooms and 2 students per bedroom are earning $6,400 per month, compared to my average gross monthly revenue of $2,400 on a 4-bedroom unit. The current requirements of this bylaw will absolutely put me out of business, and I'm not the only one in this predicament. The city's licensing manager shared with me that the majority of Airbnb units in our community are individual rooms rented in people's primary residences. Those hosts who are supplementing their pensions with the rental revenue are going to be forced out of business. They may no longer be able to afford to remain in their homes, and if they do manage to stay, I can 100% guarantee that none of those bedrooms will end up in the long-term rental pool. Lastly, the city proposes that it will post our names and the addresses of our rental units on the city's website. At present, we don't publish our addresses for safety and security reasons. So whose safety is the city concerned about? I feel it would be entirely inappropriate to post our addresses, and I'm very concerned that individuals who have not been vetted by Airbnb or any other platform could approach us without advance notice at our front doors. So I'll reiterate that I'm supportive of licensing for purposes of ensuring safety. But I don't believe that staff and council have considered all of the ripple effects of the proposed legislation, and I encourage you to postpone the decision, at least on short-term rentals, until there's been more consultation with those who will be severely negatively and unnecessarily affected by some of the stipulations in the bylaw. We'd like the opportunity for a little more time, and we'd be pleased to appoint a small group of short-term rental hosts to work with city staff, as was done in Cincinnati, to assist in the redrafting of that section of the proposed bylaw. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Lavender. I gave you a little extra time.
Thank you.
So there don't appear to be any questions. Thank you. Next up, we have Nadine Tebay. Welcome, Ms. Tebay.
Good afternoon, councillors. It's my pleasure to be here today as both a Kitchener resident and an Airbnb host to provide feedback on the proposed shared accommodation bylaw. I'd like to give you a glimpse into who I am and why I'm an Airbnb host. I've lived in Kitchener my entire life and have watched the city evolve into the vibrant and inclusive community it is today. I absolutely love this city and everything it has to offer. The reason I became an Airbnb host is very personal, and I wish there would have been more consultations with hosts before this public forum. However, I am sharing this information because being a host is helping me shape the future for my family and I. I have 4 nieces and nephews with special needs who will never be able to live alone. These children require a home with backyard space and constant family support. So my siblings and I purchased a single-lot home to eventually upgrade to a triplex for our families. However, the home as it is can't fit us all. This is why I'm an Airbnb host. It provides supplemental income to pay our high mortgage, and the money saved helps us build our future dream home. Airbnb allows us to maintain our home while helping people who need to visit the city. Our guests have included someone going through a divorce, needing a place near her children's school, families attending local graduations, funerals, sporting tournaments, which I thought that was interesting, tourists visiting St. Jacobs, and newcomers helping their kids settle into school, and so on. Now that you know a bit about my story, I want to say that while this proposed bylaw is innovative, it should reflect the realities of short-term rentals through specific clauses or perhaps a separate bylaw. I recommend the city explore, as Anne mentioned, the City of Cincinnati bylaw, which is in Ohio, as an international example, which better reflects the character and essence of the Kitchener community. For now, I will speak to some concerns I have. The first one is the insurance requirements outlined within Schedule 3 of the bylaw. The $2 million insurance limit and adding the City of Kitchener within someone's insurance plan is excessive. Other cities like Hamilton and Toronto do not require the city to be listed as an insurer, and Hamilton specifically mentions host liability insurance not less than $1 million for short-term rentals. Insurance plans already offer liability insurance for homes doing Airbnb, such as my own. Listing the city as an insurer makes it similar to corporate insurance, which is unfeasible for hosts to obtain for their home properties. This might be appropriate for lodging homes, but Airbnb hosts provide bedding, stock supplies for guests, and so on, and we take care of the lawn maintenance and our garbage, basically everything, which differs from a lodging home in which the resident would have to do it themselves. I recommend reducing the limit to $1 million and removing the City of Kitchener as an insurer. Second is the licensing fee, which is Appendix B. The licensing fee is extremely high compared to other municipalities. The fees align with the costs for the proposed FTEs, and I recognize that, but it's still high for Kitchener compared to its counterparts. I recommend reducing it by $100 for Class A and Class B licenses to align with other cities, which will incentivize compliance by all short-term rental hosts. It's unfair that a Class B license costs the same as a lodging home where they're inherently different. Unlike lodging homes, Airbnb guests pay all relevant taxes, HST, and so on, including the municipal accommodation tax, which applies to Kitchener, and it's on the Airbnb website as well, which should be reflected in the licensing fee. Number 3 is the personal information outlined within Section 4.5. It isn't clear what information would need to be posted as part of the license within the home. I oppose posting anything beyond the address and licensing number. I don't ask guests for their legal name, and they don't need to know mine. Often, only first names are used, and the full legal name and identity, including address and telephone number and so forth, is verified by Airbnb, the platform. Most hosts use nicknames to avoid discrimination and prejudice as well. So I do have a few questions about the proposed bylaw changes. The first one is in regards to the 90-day booking limit. I've read this bylaw, and it isn't clear to me if the 90-day limit applies per guest for consecutive stay, or is it overall for the year. The second is Section 7 of the staffing report. Disclosure of information portion, which mentions that all shared accommodations will be listed on the city's website along with the last inspection date. What information is part of the shared accommodation? Is it my legal name and address? If so, that's a huge safety concern. Or is it only the regulation number and inspection date? Number 3 is in regards to criminal background checks, Clause 2D and Schedule 2, which mentions that if the applicant is part of a partnership, a criminal record check must be obtained for each partner. What's the definition of a partnership? It's not provided within the bylaw. And lastly is the renter's code. What is the renter's code for short-term rentals? Is it the same as me posting my Airbnb house rules, which outline no parties, quiet time, so on and so forth? The Airbnb rental rules, which technically you agree upon when you enter the platform, along with any local bylaw rules. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bay. There don't appear to be any questions.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next up, we have Jordan Kiltz. Welcome, Mr. Kiltz.
Thank you. Thank you to the Mayor and City Councillors for giving me the opportunity to speak on this bylaw. My name is Jordan Kiltz, and my wife, Maria, who would be here, but she's actually cleaning the Airbnb for a guest at 4 o'clock, operate an Airbnb close to downtown Kitchener. We moved to Kitchener in 2020 from Guelph, and a year later, we started an Airbnb in our duplex downtown. It gave us an opportunity to show guests the reason why we moved to this city and give them recommendations to our favorite restaurants, trails right by the house like the Iron Horse Trail and the Kitchener Market. Our guests in the past month have been attending religious events in the Odd, pride events downtown, Special Olympics competitions, and convocations at our local universities. All of these guests enjoy the affordability we provide, along with a kitchen and a close proximity to downtown. We also use Airbnb when we travel to Mexico and Niagara to see family, since it's more affordable than other options and allows us to cook our own food and find ways to save money for a family of 5. The inspection for Airbnb will not be compliant, as we'll need to put in egress windows, modify the HVAC, remove the current ceilings to allow for proper fire separation between the floors. We're estimating the cost of these renovations to be around $80K. The issue is not with the cost to make those upgrades, as our house is almost 100 years old and will need to meet the current building code. It is with the compliance timelines. Last summer, we were given an order by Property Standards to fix an issue that required construction by the City of Kitchener. We were given 21 days to make this change, and it led to the eviction of 4 of the tenants in our unit. We scrambled to find them housing and compensate them over $8,000 and gave them all the furniture in the unit to help them to adjust to their new home. It was a difficult year for our tenants, and the timelines put a strain on them as this contrasted with the 8-month wait time at the Landlord-Tenant Board. We settled for compensation outside of court so we could all move on with our lives. We'll need up to 6 months just to start a triplex conversion. Then there's the cost of materials, labor, canceling bookings, whether they are short-term or long-term, to allow for the construction projects to run its course. We have an active permit with the City of Kitchener currently to create a 2-bedroom unit, and we understand all the challenges with making a unit compliant. Some of our guests are newcomers that come to the country seeking a 1 or 2 month rental period before they find their first apartment. We had a family from Ghana recently that had triplets under the age of 3, and they arrived with 15 pieces of luggage and ambition for a new start. They stayed for 1 month until they found an apartment downtown. They left some valuables after checkout, and I was able to contact them to drop off their belongings. The best part of that short visit was to see the proud look of the dad knowing he had settled into his new home. We had past guests come from other countries to study at the local colleges and universities in the area. Some coming with big families, others on their own seeking new opportunities in school and eventually work. My wife was able to get one of the guests a job at her work, and we helped them with the proper channels to find housing. We physically moved their stuff into the Lower Dune area and allowed them to settle close to the college, providing support for them to adjust to their new home. We treat our guests like family, which has allowed us to become super hosts over a year ago. We are very concerned with the idea of inspections anytime while guests are present. We make sure to provide a safe environment for them where they are not disturbed during their stay. Airbnb checks for their ID and personal info. We do not want any of that information to be stored in a public place for the protection of our guests. Identity theft is a concern in today's growing cyber environment, and we are not comfortable as hosts having access to that information, along with anyone in the City of Kitchener. Thank you for your time, and I hope that the concerns of Airbnb hosts like my wife, Maria, and I are heard together today. We'll continue to be involved in the community and provide a home away from home for many of our guests. We hope that the City of Kitchener will work with the hosts to make it viable to create those opportunities for our diverse guests.
Okay, thank you. We do have a question for you, Councillor Singh.
Yes, just a couple. Now, how many days would your accommodation stay,
It's been different. So last year, there wasn't as many Airbnbs in the city. So we had a lot of short-term, like weekly stays. I'd say this summer similar, an average of about 4 or 5 days, like a lot of sports events and things. But we have our schedule open for a year, and then we set monthly discounts. So last winter, when things were slow, we had some grad students for like 4 months, but majority are 4 or 5 days attending events.
And how many days does it say black, meaning dark?
Only like 4 or 5 days a month.
4 or 5 days a month.
Yeah, so if there's like a cancellation or a gap in the schedule, we drop it down to like $60 a night plus a cleaning fee, so they'd stay with tax for around $100.
So this question came a little after the last delegation. Should have asked at that point, but took a little while for me to process. But the last delegate said that you already pay, or a Airbnb hosts already pay additional government fees. I think specifically the Waterloo Regional Hospitality fee. Can you elaborate more on that and the cost?
So in your information, when there's a booking, you'll have the amount that the guest paid, which includes all your tax, all your Airbnb fees, and then you'll get a host payout fee.
What's the percentage of a typical stay?
I think it's about 20% less than what it includes HST and the occupancy, and it's around 20% less than what you would get if those fees didn't exist.
Are there other fees that are
yeah,
outside
like we
of
added a
Airbnb,
cleaning
what
fee.
Airbnb charges?
Yeah, we had a cleaning fee of $50. That's my son that does that, so that's his job. So we had that last summer. There was just a huge influx of Airbnbs all of a sudden. We had a $100 cleaning fee, and like occupancy was high. But then occupancy went really low, so you got to adjust because there were so many on the market. And then we dropped the cleaning fee, and then we dropped the price as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming in. I guess my question is with regards to, like, if you're comparing Airbnb to like other units, like rental units and et cetera, like that, you supply all the furniture, the TV and all that stuff. So how does it work if something gets damaged?
So we've been operating Airbnb for 3 years, and knock on wood, no damages so far. The main part is being on site. So we're in a duplex, we're in the top level, below is Airbnb. We're on site, so if it's loud, I can hear it through the vents. I'll send them a message, I'll knock on their door. I don't like to disturb them, but we have young kids and they need to sleep, go to school. We haven't had any damages. Our first guest outside of the house, his terrible guest, he hit a cherry tree, and I have cameras and everything, so I had to go out there and converse with him, like, how did this happen, and send pictures to his boss and everything. But that's the only damage that I recall. It's all the same stuff that we set up 3 years ago.
Okay. So where I'm trying to go with this is, so if someone damages something, your only repercussions is to give a bad review back, kind of thing?
So a bad review is very damaging. Like, to become a super host, you need several good reviews, like I think 50. One bad review, like before a guest books, I go through all their reviews. So if I see a 1 or a 2, we're not accepting that guest. So a bad review is very damaging. Every year they take the lowest reviews off the platform, so your listing will just get removed. And then same with the guests. It's like Uber. If you're bad, if you have bad reviews, no one's going to pick you up. Yeah.
Okay. So in other words, you are on the hook for damages.
Yeah, and you can call Airbnb. Like, we've had some guests, like when they hit the tree, like I had to go through Airbnb just to make sure that I wasn't liable. They're very responsive. Yeah, and it helps to be on site as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Okay, those are all the questions we have for you. We have 4 more delegations, which I think we're going to be able to fit in before we need to break. Just in case members of the audience weren't aware, we do need to break at 4:30 because we have opening and a dedication of Rotary Plaza behind City Hall. And so we'll hear the delegations now, but I anticipate that we're not going to get back to debating this issue until 7 o'clock when we resume the meeting. So you certainly welcome back at 7 to continue listening here, or you can watch it live through your internet feed at home if you don't want to come back. So whatever people's choice is. But we will get through the 4 delegations, I think, that we have now still. And our next delegation is a virtual one, and it's Muhammad Amjad. Hopefully pronounced that correctly.
Hello everyone, this is Muhammad Amjad. Sorry, I'm working from home. So I'm running the Airbnb from last year, and I found very flexibility. The thing is, you can easily book the days, and the days if you don't want, if you are busy, you can easily unlock the days. This is the first benefit I found, because my family's in-laws, sometimes they came to Canada and then 6 months they go, because they don't like winter, so they go spend summer there, and when the winter there and then the winter gone, they come to summer here. So it's a flexibility, is very nice. Second thing is about the insurance. I read about the insurance thing, so I research about it. Then City of Toronto and other cities, they don't require the business insurance, which is required to add to the Corporation of City of Kitchener as an additional insurance for the liability endorsement. I think this is kind of insane. You're not going to get it as a homeowner, this kind of insurance. You have to have a business, then you can get this kind of insurance. So I think city is totally going to block us for running the Airbnb business, and I think it's unfair to the homeowner. Second thing, we have to pay the property taxes. You guys recently increased more than 5%, and I'm paying $8,000 a year, and I can still not run this small business. I think it's kind of unfair. Second thing is the host maintenance thing. So people who are hosting, they maintain their house more than the landlord. So one of my friends recently have a couple of property in Kitchener. One of his property in Weber Street, the tenant burned down the entire basement. He was not paying the rent on time. And my friend applied for the landlord-tenant board, and you guys better know how the landlord-tenant board going on. They have a pending cases. Plus, he stopped the paying rent, and when he applied for the eviction, he burned down his basement, and he says, "Oh, it was by mistake." I'm explaining about his story, but I'm saying what's going on with the small landlord. So people are just pissing off and saying, "Okay, you know what? Stop this business, and better to invest somewhere else where you can protect." So let's say if something happens, so my experience is like somebody is damaging even this small bed sheet. I claim to the Airbnb, and within 48 hours, they solve the problem. So why I'm going to invest? So I'm investing a $1.8 million home, and if somebody is coming to my property and damaging as a legal duplex I'm running, how can I going to protect myself? There is no protection from the city. There is no protection from the landlord-tenant board. So I found the Airbnb have an option, at least, to run the small business and, pay your mortgages and pay your taxes on time. And also you maintain your property very nice, because, if the guest is not giving you good comments, you're going to get, you're not going to like it. Or maybe you're going to block by the Airbnb. So you maintain your property more. If you see the properties who are running by a landlord, maybe in the downtown area, you will see the properties are very old. They are not cutting their grass because tenants are not paying rent. So the owner is saying, if they're not paying rent, why I'm going and cutting the grass and those kind of things? Like, they're just not taking care. And I'm to be fair with them. Like, I'm not going to hide those things. My in-laws have a couple of properties in downtown. They recently sold everything because the tenant was not paying them. They were retired people. They were charging $1,000 a townhouse, and they were still not paying it. They sold all the lots and then moved to overseas permanently. They're saying, we saved this money for our retirement, and they are not paying us because the landlord-tenant board doing nothing. They sold the property, 3 townhouses, $740,000. Where you can find 3 townhouses in $740,000. So they lost it. They just fed up. So I don't want to be city to penalize the homeowner to make those kind of rules, which is very hard to find. So City of Kitchener should be very friendly, so all the people can come and join. I'm joining first time in this meeting, and we have around, I think, 1,200 Airbnb units in the Kitchener, and I think only few people know about this meeting going on. I think I just got a Facebook. I joined the Facebook group, and I got a message over there. So I just joining, but I talked to a couple of people in Kitchener who are the host. They say, oh no, we did not get kind of emails. So I think city needs to involve more people through some channels, through emails, through mailbox, because you guys have our addresses. So you can send us those kind of information so we can easily join. And then we take a decision because we are your customers. And customer is the first. I'm in supply chain and customer is the first priority and we are the customer for the city. So I think city needs to understand what is our concern and solve the problem. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next delegate, thank you. There aren't any questions for you, Mr. Amjad. Our next delegation is Laura Orser. Welcome, Ms. Orser.
Thank you, Your Worship and Honourable Council. I'm actually here and to protect the 5-minute time limit. I will first just read, I'm representing my friend who's super shy and she owns the home with her husband. So first off, I will just read what she has written. She's the next one, Eleni Shuftis, but she's really too shy to speak.
So this is Ms. Erin Tam that you're speaking for?
Sorry?
Sorry, you're speaking on behalf of who?
Eleni Shuftis. I think she's next.
Okay, she's not on my list, so.
Okay, then
Okay.
we were put together. Okay, great. This is Eleni's words, and her husband George. I am in opposition of this bylaw. I am a homeowner who has been using Airbnb to make some income for our unused bedroom. Using Airbnb has been a great help to us during this time when finances have been a struggle. Our mortgage went up $900 a month. It has saved us from having to sell our home. And as an example of that, in the last 30 days, with their 2-bedroom, they've only, before expenses, made $661 on their rooms. We have lived in our home for 2 years. Our home is consistently rated 5 stars with repeated guests. The property standards document I read consists of 28 pages of requirements to which we would need to follow. Even reading through, this is a huge burden for an average homeowner who often has multiple jobs to meet income needs. Now, Eleni and George both work full-time, and then this is necessary as a third income just to make their mortgage. This Airbnb is a third income and essential income in order to keep our home. This bylaw would strangle us financially to the point where we would have to sell our home. We have chosen short-term rental as we do not want to be put into the situation of renting to a tenant monthly, as we have heard and seen the horror stories of the landlord and tenant board being backed up and tenants abusing the delay in the system. Short-term rental has been our only refuge as homeowners. This bylaw is harmful to throw in right now and also does not solve having more housing options when you apply it to us homeowners who share rooms. So that's Eleni's and George's situation. They are this is a third income in order to, this is also just a semi-attached home that they live in. They take on, fix up their own basement for themselves. They, for when the people come, they use their upstairs. They've been very accommodating. She works so hard. She does all the, laundry or the services because they can't even also take on, staffing to do their cleaning or anything. These are just private individuals who are trying to use their own asset to the best, to its fullest, and almost to have the right to do that, right? It's not even a business. It is their home, and they bring people in, so.
Okay, thank you. And so you weren't representing?
I'm Laura Orser.
So you weren't representing yourself at all. You were simply here to represent Ms. Shuftis.
I am a co-host when
Oh,
they
okay.
go away, so I know the whole platform, and
Okay.
I am experienced to participate. And Eleni has done everything to, I mean, she could be in Greece and open the front door, you know, all the technological, to make everything, she works very hard to be a 5-star rating constantly, and has achieved that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next delegation is Robert Lindner. Welcome,
Thank you.
Mr. Lindner.
Thank you, everybody. I just want to echo a lot of what everybody else was saying. I had owned 2 multiplexes here in town that I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars fixing up and making beautiful, only to lose them to very bad tenants. My first 4-plex on Cortland Ave, I had wonderful tenants until one young couple moved in and was selling drugs out of the home, and the police couldn't do anything about it, and I moved to evict, and the landlord-tenant board refused to remove them. I was forced to sell the property. Very similar, or just around the corner on Cedar Street, I rebuilt a triplex, and again spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and made it beautiful, only to have one bad tenant who was a constant problem. She actually attacked one of the other tenants, pushed him down, broke his hip, and he's never recovered. So I ended up selling, couldn't get her evicted either, so I ended up selling that property. I now live in a lovely little side split in Stanley Park that I Airbnb the basement bedroom out, and it works amazingly well. Nobody on the street even knows it's an Airbnb. It's very quiet. I have lovely people. However, if this were to come to pass and my property was listed on a public site, there's no way I would do that. I would shut it down, and I would not.
Sorry, can you speak up a little louder?
I would not Airbnb the property any longer if my home is listed on a public domain, listed as an Airbnb. I don't think that's fair. My mortgage went up last year, $1,600 a month. The Airbnb certainly helps, but does not cover those costs. I'd probably, if I couldn't Airbnb it, I'd be in a real struggle to pay my mortgage every month, and I don't think that's fair for council to deny me that stream of income. I've only had one problem tenant that they actually, I shouldn't say, they didn't destroy anything, but they made a terrible mess. Airbnb paid for that. I just applied to Airbnb, showed them the damage, and they paid for that. And I believe that's the rules for any Airbnb. So I just wanted to make my feelings known.
Okay, thank you. There don't appear to be any questions.
Okay.
Thank you for coming in, Mr. Lindner. And our last delegation is Erin Thiam. Thiam, am I pronouncing that correctly? Sorry? She left? Okay. There aren't any other delegations on this issue? Just want to make sure. Okay. We'll now, actually, I do have one question, and a couple of the delegations referenced the Cincinnati bylaw. Can either of you, and I apologize to ask you to come back down and just speak to it briefly, and what it references? And I'm asking the question, but I will preface it with Cincinnati would work in a very different legal framework than we do, because as you know, it's in the United States, different set of laws, different state, different than provincial, even province to province, things are differently. But just so that we understand what it's speaking to. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Bay.
Perfect. So I discovered the Cincinnati bylaw. Back in 2019, this is when the bylaw first came into effect. In the city of Cincinnati, they were having an influx of short-term rentals, and they wanted to make sure that they were safe and make sure that the city at least had some sort of oversight over them. And what ended up happening is that they consulted a group of hosts, Airbnb hosts. Like, I work on the Airbnb platform, but this can also include the VBR, BBBCO, that other one, right? But nonetheless...
VRBOs, you mean?
Yeah, well, I don't use it, so exactly. So they consulted a bunch of hosts, and they got together. They did a huge consultation, and they wrote the bylaw with them to say, you know what, like, based on these circumstances, what is X, Y, and Z? To kind of summarize what the bylaw is. And our bylaw, or the proposed bylaw, the shared accommodation one, does touch upon many of those elements, one of which is making sure that you're up to date in terms of all your taxes to the city, and you're in good standing, so you're not late, you pay all like your utilities, your hydro, you pay your property tax, you maintain your property in terms of lawn maintenance and snow removal and so on and so forth, so it doesn't dent the character of the neighborhood. And they also had a portion which indicates that if you have more than 3 bylaw strikes, you're out. So I thought that was really interesting as well. But they didn't have anything in terms of, well, they did mention inspections, but it was more or less that you have to give people adequate amount of time. In the proposed bylaw, you mentioned 1 hour for emergencies and 3 hours for non-emergencies. I mean, when I go and cut the lawn on my own property, I give people 24 hours notice, right? So that's kind of like an example. So it has those different elements. They also have a definition of short-term rental and whatnot. So I think that it would be worth looking at that international example, because I did look comprehensively at all the short-term rental example bylaws within Canada and how bits and pieces were taken for this specific bylaw. I am a policy analyst by my position, and so I thought it was crafty, it was innovative, but I also felt like we have a chance to really take that a step forward, and that Cincinnati bylaw would be able to fill in those gaps.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that additional information. So we'll now move to, we do have one other delegation on this issue? Oh, for the intention to designate? Okay, maybe that's what we'll do then. Before we do questions on this issue, we'll hear the one other delegation that's here for another item, so that they don't need to wait till 7 o'clock. So, folks, as I said, on this issue, we will be coming back to it at 7 o'clock. You're welcome to come back to the council chamber if you'd like to be here and see it live, but if you prefer to have a beverage of your choice and do it at home and join virtually, you're also free to do that as well. And you can do that via the www.kitchener.ca/watch now. So in the meantime, but I do want to say to all of you who have come in today, and some of you came for a second time, thank you very much for coming and sharing your stories and your passion on this issue. You obviously have very different lived experiences with it, and I think it's important for council to have heard that, and no doubt we'll consider those as we debate it later on this evening. In the meantime, I'm going to ask for the delegation with respect to 91 Madison Avenue South, the objection to notice of intention to designate, to come forward, and I believe that's Mr. Negoslav Radulovic, and you have 5 minutes, sir, to speak to your issue.
Thank you.
Welcome,
you.
sir.
Thank you, everybody. Anyways, I'm probably not going to need 5 minutes, but anyways, I want to refer for International Fellowship Church of God in terms of that you wanted to...
You can just speak up loudly so we hear you.
In terms that you want to designate it to the heritage. So we are a small congregation, about 50 people altogether. We bought this building in the year 2000, and that's old building built in 1906 or so. And we maintain that in a very good manner as much as we can, and we renovated that building since 2000 and make it nice, appealing outside and inside. And suddenly, actually last year in September, we lost our long-term pastor. And we are now in turmoil and hard situation. And especially the designation for heritages would have a very hard impact on us financially. So having myself 3 properties in my lifetime that were designated as a heritage, I have some experience how much would cost in terms of maintaining the property to be an heritage, to have like in this case, we might need to change the doors, which is about 3 doors, very expensive ones to make them in the terms to be exactly same as original. And windows are, many windows, we have over 50 windows in the church, which are very expensive to replace. So for that reason, I would like to ask you if you can please oppose that not to recognize it a heritage, at least at this time now, so that we have some time to recoup and get to the better situation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Radulovic. There are some questions, I believe. Councillor Michaud, is this, no, it's from the previous item. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering, were you aware of the fact that that property was listed when you bought it?
Sorry, say it again?
Were you aware of the fact that that property was listed, not designated, but listed when you purchased it?
No, it wasn't at that time. At least that's first news to us now that it's wanted to be designated, but it might be some, but we didn't know about that. And the other thing, pastor who passed away, he might be aware of that, but we don't know now.
Okay, well, I'll ask that question to staff later then. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, those appear to be all the questions that we have. Thank you for coming in, Mr. Radulovic.
Thank you.
Okay. Council, it's 4:25, so I think we'll leave the questions of staff until 7 o'clock as well. There may be a need to go in, I think, to get additional legal advice. So Councillor Singh is moving that. I'll suggest we're going to be done with the reception at 6:30. So can we go back into caucus at 6:30, and that will allow us to resume council at 7 then. Everyone amenable to that? So it's been moved by Councillor, sorry? A second by Councillor Davey. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Motion to recess. Councillor Schneider, Councillor Johnson. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you.